The linguists have explained it to mean that Allah will bring upon them what He promised them of punishment and reckoning, as in the verse فَأَتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَمْ يَحْتَسِبُوا, meaning He did not give them the ability to obey. So yani, here the author is basically explaining all the different parts or different verses in the Quran that use the verb ata, which is connected to the noun ityan, which some people would translate literally as coming, but it does not mean that Allah Ta'ala relocates from one place to another. So we cannot say about Allah that He came, because this would be non-befitting. And Al-Bayhaqi said in Al-Asma' wa Sifat, Abu Sulaiman al-Khattabi, may Allah have mercy on him, said regarding the Prophet saying, oh, we'll fix that. We'll see a little bit. But it means that its interpretation is that it's the Qibla to which Allah has commanded him to face for the prayer is in front of him, and so he should preserve it from spitting. The what happens attribute at all, the exception, uh, the attribute, um, being Allah in these texts. So Allah Ta'ala, he doesn't mean that Allah Ta'ala is not valid to interpret those verses and those hadith as literal. So you cannot say that Allah Ta'ala is in front of you while you're praying, because that would be attributing created attributes to Allah. It would be likening Allah to the creations. It would be uh, not befitting to attribute to Allah. So the meaning is not that Allah Ta'ala would be in front of you when you're praying. The meaning is that there is a special mercy that descends upon the Muslim who is praying, and that special mercy is it for the Muslim to in front of the Muslim he should have spit it towards the direction that's in front of him. He should spit it to the side, or use his the cuff of his shirt, or use like something like a part of his clothing to get it out of his mouth, or take a tissue and a napkin and uh wipe it off. But he shouldn't spit in front of him. Why? Because there's a special mercy that is in front of the person, and so he shouldn't spit in front of him. Uh, then we move on to another verse 30 of the chapter. Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. The Arabic is not written there, but that's the terms of it. It means the one who guides the inhabitants of the heavens and the earth to the light of Islam. Narrated by Al-Bayhaqi from the route of Abdullah, the son of Abbas. May God accept his deeds. Yani, some people, they read that verse and they think that it means that Allah is a light. So this shows the danger of reading on your own and trying to go beyond what is the allowed scope of the Muslim or the individual when it comes to the verses of the Quran and when it comes to the Hadith. So that's why we need to learn the knowledge by acquisition so that we make sure that we don't have any misunderstanding and make a mistake in the way that we interpret the verses of the Quran. From the chapter, it doesn't mean Allah is a light. It means that Allah is the one who guides the inhabitants of the heavens and the earth. So Al-Taqi narrated this from Abdullah, the son of Abbas, who is known as the author of the Quran. And so this is what we mean by how we approach the mutashabih verses. Those verses that they use were that mean those meanings they not befit Allah. So we need uh to those words a meaning fit in the language and a meaning also into the Nur in the Arabic language. It has more than one meaning. It can mean light, it can mean illumination, uh, and it can also mean guidance, and it can also mean guiding. And we well, about it, I and say about Allah that God. So Allah, he is a because we know that we cannot say that about him. We say about him that he died because that's what makes sense linguistically and religiously. And that is a fact. So it's not like we're changing the meanings and we're not taking the meaning of the Quran. No, we're not dismissing that. And we do use the same wording, let's say in Arabic. We do say that Allah Ta'ala is An-Nur, right? Is one of his names. One of the names of Allah is An-Nur. So we do say that, but we don't say that it means that Allah is a light. We say that Allah is An-Nur, meaning the guide, the one who guides. And the same thing with verse 39 of Surah Taha, لِتُصْنَعَ عَلَى عَيْنِي, which means for the Muslims or for those who are being referred to in the verse, by the protection and security of Allah. So the term aini, it doesn't mean my eye. So Allah Ta'ala is not attributing himself with having an eye. So that, like we mentioned before, the word ain has multiple meanings. Um, some of those meanings are befitting to Allah, some of those meanings are not befitting to Allah. So we dismiss and we reject the meanings that are not to Allah, and we uh, assign the meanings that are befitting to Allah according to the language and according to the rules of the religion. Um, Also with verse 37 of Surah Hud, and it means make the ark so that you and those who believe in you will ride it with being seen by Allah. Yani, again, same thing, under the protection and security of Allah. Right? These are all the verses that they are referencing the word ain in the Arabic language, ain. So these these places in the Quran that are using that term or that have that term, ain or aini or ala aini, they're referring to the protection and the security of Allah, and they are not referring to an organ, right? They're not referring to an eyeball. They're not referring to what we know as an eye, because Allah Ta'ala is not attributed with organs, because Allah Ta'ala is not a creation. And for us, it's that simple. For the anthropomorphists, it's not that simple. What's the verse? وَاصْنَعِ الْفُلْكَ بِأَعْيُنِنَا وَوَحْيِنَا وَلَا تُخَاطِبْنِي فِي الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا إِنَّهُمْ مُغْرَقُونَ. And so what does this mean? It means that the those who are going to be in the ark, or the ark being built, that they're going to be protected, and they are under the security of Allah. So yeah, the point is that there are these terms used in the Quran, in the verses, that referring to Allah, they don't mean face. Referring to Allah, they don't mean eye. Referring to Allah, they don't mean an organ. Referring to Allah, they are not you cannot say those words in English about Allah. You can't say about Allah that he has an eye. You can't say about Allah that he has eyes. You can't say about Allah that he has hands. You can't say about Allah that he has a face. So those terms that are mentioned in the Quran, that some people, they translate them as hands and face and eyes, we say that's not the proper meaning, and as per the verse. And also, there are those words in the Arabic language, they carry other meanings inherently. Like those words themselves in the Arabic language, they have those other meanings. So why would someone dismiss them and ignore them? And instead of choosing those meanings that befit Allah, why do they choose those physical meanings? Al-Rabi', the son of Anas, said, with being protected by Allah, the protection of someone who is being seen. And the protection of someone who, and they're being and protected, and someone might say watched over, right? Because Allah Ta'ala enabled Prophet Noah alayhi salam and the believers who were with him to be safe from the flood. Ibn Abbas, may God reward them both, said, with being guarded by Allah, mentioned by Al-Qurtubi in his tafsir. Al-Qurtubi said in his tafsir, talking about the yad in the Arabic language, the yad is for attributing the doing to the predicate to honor and aggrandize. Verse 75 of Surah Sad means, O Iblis, what has prevented you from prostrating to what Allah created biyaday? Hence, it is not valid to interpret it as an organ, because the Creator, exalted as He, is one. Breaking up into parts does not apply to Him. It is interpreted as dominion down, because then at that point it would be shared by Adam, who is accepted, and by Iblis, who is rejected. And what he mentioned about being given a greater status would be invalidated due to the meaning of specification being nullified. Thus, it has to be that it is interpreted as two attributes that honor the creation of Adam and not the creation. It does not mean touching. So basically, what does that mean? ما منعك أن تسجد لما خلقت بيدي. So here, just some background on the verse. It's verse 75 of the chapter Sod. And basically what happens here is that this, the devil, right, he had to make sujud to Prophet Adam alayhi salam when Adam came to life. قال يا إبليس ما منعك أن تسجد لما خلقت بيدي. So the verse means that Allah Ta'ala did not Iblis يعني Allah delivered this message. Oh Iblis, what has prevented you from prostrating to what Allah has created biyaday? What does that mean, biyaday? This is the part that we want to learn. Biyaday, it means two attributes of Allah that they specify Prophet Adam alayhi salam with a special status over Iblis. So that's the meaning of the term biyaday. It doesn't mean organs, it doesn't mean touching, it doesn't mean two hands. It means a specialty, two attributes that show that Prophet Adam alayhi salam has a specialty over devil. And so that's what this great scholar Al-Qurtubi was mentioning, that it doesn't mean touching and it doesn't mean organs. Instead, that it means a specialty that was given to Adam. As for verse 4 of Al-Hadid, Ibn Abbas, may God reward them both, said, God knows all about you wherever you are. This is mentioned by As-Suyuti in Ad-Dur al-Manthur. So again, these verses, they cannot be taken literally, because by taking them literally, it would be attributing an attribute of creation, it would be attributing a deficiency, it would be attributing imperfection to Allah. And this is something of course, the verses of the Quran don't have that meaning. And so this is that we need to understand properly. Yeah, and say these verses, and they are pulling from a English misquotation, a mistranslation, and they use the word hands. They draw a grotesque look figure and say this is God, say this is Allah, and then they reference literally, and they say uh, they try to say that Allah has two hands, and then they say it has multiple eyes, and then they say that um, Allah has 1 foot. They say all these things, and then they draw that grotesque figure, and they say, "Look, this is the God of Islam." And then when you come on there and you tell them that's not the meaning of the verse, they say, "Well, look, this is what it says in English. This is what it says on so-called Quran.com." And so we tell them this is the case, that is the meaning, proper meaning that is befitting to Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said, indeed, all the hearts of the children of Adam are between the isba'ain of the Rahman. The Hafiz ibn Hajar said in Fath al-Bari, likewise his saying, may God raise his rank, indeed, the heart of the human is between the isba'ain. Now, I get everything ready. Mom, where are you going? Mom, where are you gonna go? We're going to a store, Mommy. Be quiet. Class. I was just sitting here. This the term Isba'ini. الله بنيانا القواعد عليه وسلم الاثنان فالإنسان من الله. So the scholars they make clear that this is the proper way that we should interpret the Shabbat verses and not attribute physicality. Likewise, the prophetic saying, okay, so now mentioning this other, that all of them they interpreted in the same way, and it's not that the the way that we interpret them is inconsistent. No, it's always the same. We give it a meaning, we give it an interpretation, we give it we assign a word that is befitting in the language and that is aligned with the actual meaning of what that verse or hadith is talking about. And we're going to get into the term yad. We're going to get into the term wajh. We're going to get into the term ayn in more detail. We're not going to, and right now we're just doing like a surface review. That surface review is about just introducing the concepts of how these were narrated in the hadith and how these were narrated in the Quran, and that we can't use the word face and we can't use the word hand and we can't use the word foot or eye in English referring to Allah. We can use the word wajh, we can use the word ayn, we can use the word yad, we can use these words because they were mentioned in the Quran, yani in Arabic, but we cannot use them, we cannot literally translate them when we switch to English, because the term eye only has the physical meaning in English. The term face only has the physical meaning. So we're not allowed to attribute to Allah words that he did not attribute to himself. And of course that they give the wrong impression. So here too, likewise the prophetic saying, which is narrated by Al-Bukhari, that a rabbi came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, "O Muhammad, indeed Allah put the sky upon an isba, the earth upon an isba, the mountains upon an isba, the trees upon an isba, the rivers upon an isba, and the rest of the creations upon an isba. Then it will be said with his yad, I am the owner." And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may God raise his rank, ضحك and recited verse 67 of Az-Zumar, وَمَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. Ibn al-Jawzi said in his book Kashf Mushkil, Abu Sulaiman al-Khattabi said, he said, it is possible that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam smiled in objection, and the saying of someone who said it was affirmation is an assumption from him, and the apparent meaning is that it stemmed from the confusion and delusions of the Jews. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's smile was out of surprise and negation. Then if the narration were confirmed to be authentic, the meaning would be that the ease of the matter is like someone gathering something in his palm, finding it light to carry. Yet it did not encompass his entire palm, but rather he held it with some of his fingers. It is said so-and-so does such a thing with his little finger. And so, again, you cannot attribute fingers to Allah. So what the Wahhabis would do is they would interpret that hadith literally, and they would say that the rabbi came to him and came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that the rabbi said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the Jews, they really believe that God is a body, so that the Jews came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and told him, indeed Allah put the sky upon a finger, the earth upon a finger, the mountains upon a finger, the trees upon a finger, the rivers upon a finger, and the rest of the creations upon a finger. Then it will be said with his hand, I am the owner. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did not concur to what that rabbi was saying. He didn't agree with what the rabbi was saying. And some people, they say, oh, look, well, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he smiled when the rabbi said it, and he recited the verse 67 of Az-Zumar, which means they do not have the and it means وَمَا قَدَرُوا اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. I need to review the meaning, but what comes to my mind right now, for what I have learned, is that they did not um, aggrandize Allah as they should have, and they didn't exalt the status of Allah. But anyway, Ibn al-Jawzi, who is a great scholar of Islam, he mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not concurring with what the Jew was saying, that Allah has fingers. He wasn't concurring. So the anthropomorphist, he can't use that as proof to say, look, when the rabbi said that God has fingers, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam smiled. So this means that Allah has fingers. We say, no, that's not the case, because not always when someone smiles does it mean that they're in agreement. And sometimes the person, they like they would smile at something, or their mouth would like turn into something that looks like a smile, out of rejection, or showing that this person is delusional, or that this person, they don't know what they're talking about. But so in the Arabic language, the term isba' can be used as a figure of speech to mean the ease of doing something, the ease of the matter, that a matter is easy. And so that is that's the meaning. And if when the term isba is used, referring to Allah, not the meaning of fingers. We don't attribute fingers to Allah. And so the same thing with this hadith, which the Wahhabis, they love to use it and say that um, Allah Ta'ala has a foot. They like to say that Allah has a foot. And so they use this hadith. So I like that his saying, peace be and blessings be upon him, which was narrated by Al-Bukhari and Muslim. لا تزال جهنم تقول هل من مزيد حتى يضع رب العزة فيها قدمه فتقول قط قط وعزتك ويزوى بعضها إلى بعض. So this means hell continues to say, is there any more? Until the Lord of Glory places his qadam in it, and it says, enough, enough by your glory. And some of it is folded into another part. So a scholar named Badruddin Al-Aini, he said in his book, Umdatul Qari, know that these are among the famous hadiths of the attributes, and the scholars are divided into two schools of thought regarding them. One of them, the school of the Mufawwidah, those who leave the interpretation to Allah, which is the belief that it is as Allah willed, and it has a meaning that befits him, and its apparent meaning is not meant. This is the position of the majority of the Salaf and a group of the theologians. We mentioned that before, that they just attribute the word qadam to Allah, but they know it doesn't mean foot, but they don't assign a specific befitting word. Just like what we did for istawa, we said that the majority of the Salaf, they said istawa, we believe in it, but it doesn't mean sitting, it doesn't mean settling, it doesn't mean rising above, but they didn't assign a befitting meaning. And the majority of the later scholars, they said istawa means subjugate, to subjugate. So that's like the two ways of approach, the two ways of ta'wil. The school of the Mu'awwila, those who interpret, which is the view of the majority of the theologians, based on this, they disagreed in interpreting the qadam and the rijl. It was said the qadam here refers to the preceding one, and this is permissible in the language, meaning that Allah places in hellfire what he made to be put forth of the people of torment. It was also said the qadam refers to the foot of some of the creatures, and the pronoun his qadam refers to that known creature, or there's a creature whose name is the qadam. So even in any case, and we see here that the scholars of Islam, that none of them interpreted the term qadam to mean foot, because that would be non-befitting to attribute to Allah, and it would be blasphemous to attribute an organ to Allah. So there's no room for the anthropomorphists to try and use the Quran and the Hadith to confirm his corrupt creed, because there's no need to use the word that is that literally means an organ, and in English, like foot. There's no need to use that word to explain the meaning of the word qadam in the Arabic language, because that word, it has multiple meanings. And some of those meanings, they are befitting to attribute to Allah, and some of them are not. So the proper approach to these verses, that they have multiple meanings linguistically, is to negate the physical meaning and to either say it has a meaning befitting to Allah, but for sure doesn't mean organ, and for sure doesn't mean an attribute of the creation or a physical meaning, and then to leave it as something that we don't know the exact word that is the meaning of in that verse, or we take the second position, which is we assign a word that has a befitting meaning linguistically and religiously, and we say istawa means subjugation. Them means the group, the final group of people that Allah Ta'ala put in hellfire, for example. And that all of that fits in the language and it fits religiously. So this is the proper way that we should approach interpreting the mutashabih verses, which are the verses that use terms that have multiple meanings. Some of them are befitting to Allah and some of them are not. So basically, there's no room for anyone to attribute organs to Allah, claiming that it says such and such in the Quran. There's no room to attribute fingers or foot or face to Allah, claiming that such and such hadith says this. There's no room for anyone to say God is in the sky, and they would cite such and such a verse, saying, oh, look, this verse says that. So none of the verses of the Quran say that Allah is in the sky. None of the verses of the Quran attribute organs to Allah. None of the hadiths say that Allah is in the sky. None of the hadiths say that Allah has organs. And so the reason for that is because those words that are used, they have multiple meanings. Some of them are befitting to Allah, some of them are not. The meanings that are not befitting to Allah, we have to reject them. And the meanings that are befitting to Allah, we have to establish them. We can't say, oh, Allah has a foot, but it's not like our foot. Because the foot is a foot no matter how you cut it. If you want to say, if someone wants to say, when we say foot, we don't mean foot, then that really is a strange thing, and that is a confusing thing. Because if you're saying foot, but you don't mean foot, then why are you using the word foot? If you're using the word face, but you don't mean face, then why are you using the word face? Instead, use a different word that carries the meaning of what it is. Yani. And we have that meaning because the scholars of Al-Islam, they have mentioned that meaning. They have documented it in their books, as we have shown the references. We'll talk more in detail next week about specifically the term ayn, which some translate into eye, specifically the term yad, which some translate into hand, specifically the term wajh, which some translate into face. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. Are there any questions about anything we mentioned so far? طيب نهلل لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم ربي اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات وبارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم.